The modern guitar is a fretted musical instrument that usually has 6 metal strings. It is typically played with both hands by strumming or plucking the strings with either a guitar pick or the fingers of one hand, while simultaneously fretting or pressing the strings against the frets with the fingers of the other hand. The sound of the vibrating strings is projected either acoustically by means of the hollow chamber for an acoustic guitar, or through an electrical amplifier and speaker. The guitar is a type of chordophone, traditionally constructed from wood and strung with either gut, nylon, or steel strings, and distinguished from other chordophones by its construction and tuning. The guitar has literally spawned hundreds, if not thousands, of styles of music since its creation. The history of the guitar spans multiple continents with many different variations, and whose history can be traced back over 4,000 years. Many theories have been proposed about the instrument's lineage. It has often been claimed that the guitar is a development of the lute, or even of the ancient Greek kithara. Research done by Dr. Michael Kasha in the 1960s showed these claims to be without merit. He showed that the lute is a result of a separate line of development, sharing common ancestors with the guitar, but having had no influence on its evolution. The sole evidence for the kithara theory is the similarity between the Greek word kithara and the Spanish word guitarra, when in fact Kasha surmises that the Greeks Hellenified the old Persian name for a four-stringed instrument, chartar, which debunks the kithara theory. The world's museums contain many such harps from the ancient Sumerian, Babylonian, and Egyptian civilizations. Around 2500 to 2000 CE, more advanced harps, such as the opulently carved 11-stringed instrument with gold decoration found in Queen Shub-ad's tomb, started to appear. A tambour is defined as a long-necked string instrument with a small egg or pear-shaped body, an arched or round back, and usually with a soundboard of wood or hide. The timbre probably developed from the bowl harp, as you can see the neck was straightened out to allow the strings to be pressed down to create more notes. Tomb paintings and stone carvings in Egypt testify to the fact that harps and timbres, including flutes and other percussion instruments, were being played in ensemble 3,500 to 4,000 years ago. Here's one for all you collectors out there. This is a 3,500-year-old vintage guitar. It belonged to the Egyptian singer Har-Mose, and he was buried with it near the tomb of his employer, Senmut, who was architect to Queen Hatshepsut around 1503 BCE. Senmut built Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, which stands on the banks of the Nile to this day. So Har-Mose's instrument had 3 strings and a plectrum suspended from the neck by a cord, which is pretty cool. The soundbox was made of beautifully polished cedar wood and had a rawhide soundboard. It can still be seen today at the Archaeological Museum in Cairo. To distinguish guitars from other members of the timbre family, we need to define what a guitar is. Dr. Kasha defines a guitar as having a long, fretted neck, flat wooden soundboard, ribs, and a flat back, most often with incurved sides. The oldest known iconographical representation of an instrument displaying all the essential features of a guitar is a stone carving at Alaka Hayuk in Turkey of a 3,300-year-old Hittite guitar. From here, the timbre story takes another line of development in the Arabian countries, changing in its proportions and remaining fretless. The Moors brought the oud to Iberia, Spain in the 8th century. The oud, as a fundamental difference with the Western lute, has no frets and a smaller neck. It is the direct ancestor of the European lute. The oldest surviving oud is thought to be in Brussels at the Museum of Musical Instruments. Europeans added frets to the oud and called it a lute. This derives from the Arabic alud, literally the wood, via the Spanish name laud. A lute, defined as a short-necked instrument with many strings, a large pear-shaped body with highly vaulted back, and an elaborate, sharply angled peghead. It is hard to see how the guitar could possibly have evolved from the lute with its short neck and many strings. The name guitar comes from the ancient Sanskrit word for string, or tar. Many stringed folk instruments exist in Central Asia to this day, which have been used in almost unchanged form for several thousand years. Many have names that end in tar with a prefix indicating the number of strings, as in dotar, sitar, chartar, kitara, chitara, and the panchtar. Timbres and harps spread around the ancient world with travelers and merchants. The four-stringed Persian chartar arrived in Spain, where it changed somewhat in form and construction, acquired pairs of unison-tuned strings instead of single strings, and became known as the guitarn, kitara, chitara, or vihuela. There are many variations of these older instruments, with from anywhere from 3 to 5 strings, and they can be seen in medieval illustrated manuscripts and carved in stone on churches and cathedrals from Roman times all the way through the Middle Ages. By the beginning of the Renaissance, the four-course, four unison-tuned pairs of strings guitar had become quite dominant throughout most of Europe. Sometimes a single first string was used. The earliest known music for the four-course chitara was written in 16th century Spain. The five-course chitarra battente first appeared in Italy at around that same time, and gradually replaced the four-course instrument. Standard tuning had already settled at A, D, G, B, E, like the top 5 strings of the modern guitar. In common with lutes, early guitars seldom had necks with more than 8 frets, but as the guitar evolved, this increased from 10 and then to 12 to the body. A sixth course, or grouping of 2 strings, was added to the Italian chitarra battente in the 17th century. and guitar makers all over Europe followed the trend. The six-course arrangement gradually gave way to six single strings, and again it seems that the Italians were the driving force. At the beginning of the 19th century, you can see the modern guitar beginning to take shape. Bodies were still fairly small and narrow-waisted. The modern classical guitar took its present form when the Spanish maker Antonio Torres increased the size of the body, altered its proportions, and introduced the revolutionary fan top bracing pattern around 1850. His design radically improved the volume, tone, and projection of the instrument, and very soon became the accepted construction standard. Around the same time Torres started making his breakthroughs, Spanish and German immigrants to the USA, among them Christian Martin, had begun making guitars with X-braced tops. Steel strings first became widely available in around 1900. Steel strings offered the promise of much louder guitars, but the increased tension was too much for the Torres-style fan-braced top. A beefed-up X-brace proved equal to the job and quickly became the industry standard for the flat-top steel string guitar. At the end of the 19th century, Orville Gibson was building archtop guitars with oval sound holes. He married the steel string guitar with a body constructed more like a cello. This allowed the top to vibrate more freely and thus produce more volume. And it's at this point in the story of the guitar that we've reached the early 1900s. We start seeing a lot more familiar shapes of guitars, also a lot of mandolins, and it's kind of funny, most of the players in the early 1900s were actually women. Just a little fun fact for you. Well, thanks for stopping by. I hope you liked the video. Stay tuned for part 2, where we focus more on the 1900s and the modern electric and acoustic guitars.